All right, Ravosai. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share, to thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for Tavshin Pei Hey, the Tilson Family of Am Yisroel, for dedicating all the Shuman Drushos this year as a zechus for besuros, tovos for Am Yisroel. Our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Adar, Teri and Steve Czinn, loving memory of Teri's father, Dr. Harry Kahn, Tzvi, Hersch, Ben Yosef, HaKohen, and the Ziv, Lavine, and Behrman families in memory of Mr. Willian Ziv, Zev Shmuel Yisrael, Zechron Levrach. We hope that in merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the Neshamos Lavine Aliyah, the families in Nechama, all those who need a refuah shavan together with Kol Yisrael, Hashem Shemer, Hashem bring home all of our hostages and allow our holy soldiers to be successful. B'chol Maaseh Yedehem. But with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Tzadik Aleph 91. We have a steep climb today, Meretz Hashem, but we're going to make it. We are picking up on Tzadik Amuday's 90b, and I got a countdown from the top. So we are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 12 lines down from the top. The Rabbi Shmuel Tana. So again, the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel, they thought the following. Supposed to remember again, we're in the sugya of trying to find some type of scriptural allusion to Tchias HaMesim. Right? From where do we know that there's Tchias HaMesim in the Torah? So what we ended off with yesterday is a pasuk that says, Unesatem mimenu es trumas Hashem ni Aaron HaKohen. You shall give truma to Aaron. Now remember, I'll say, it's very interesting. Aaron received many things in life. The one thing he never ever received was truma. Why? Because Truma only goes into effect when you go into Eretz Yisrael, and Aaron never made it into Eretz Yisrael. So at the end of the day, what could this mean? That ultimately, again, you give Truma to Aaron. So remember, again, it must be that the pasuk means that Tchias HaMesim. So the Gemara says, the Gemara goes weiter. The Rabbi Shmuel Tana la Aaron ka-Aaron. So what does it mean? We have to give Truma to someone like Aaron. Meaning what? Ma Aaron chaver af banav chaverim. Just like Aaron is a chaver, right? Just like Aaron again is a Talmud Chacham, and therefore knows how to go ahead and deal with truma in the appropriate way. So too again, in general, you have to give to other chaverim. Am Rabbi Shmuel Rachmani, Am Rabbi Yonasan. How do you know that you can't give truma to a kohen who is ignorant? Shene'emar li'am li'oshe Yushalayim lo says manas l'kohen levin l'man yachzaku b'toras Hashem. Because again, the way the pasuk phrases it is, you give the Kohanim truma that they should be strong in the Torah of the Ribono Shel Olam. Kol machzik b'toras Hashem, whoever is holding literally again the Torah of the Ribono Shel Olam, yesh lo manas, has a portion in truma. V'she'eno machzik b'toras Hashem, and whoever is not holding strong in the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ein lo manas, does not have a portion. Again, I will say, this, as we're going to see, this is not as much punitive as it is just very important, because truma has a lot of details, truma has a lot of obligations, and misuse of truma can bring a potential death penalty along with it. Whoever gives truma to a kohen who is an Am Yisroel, it's as if he gives it to a lion. Ma'ari safek doris v'ochel, safek ina doris v'ochel. When you put food in front of a lion, there's a safek. Will it tear it apart and eat it or not? Af kohen Am Yisroel, safek ochla b'tara, safek ochla b'tuma. So too again, when you give something, when you give truma to a kohen Am Yisroel, a safek. Will he eat it in a state of ritual purity? Will he eat it in a state of ritual impurity? Rabbi Yochanan says, Af gorim lo misa. If one gives truma to a kohen Am Yisroel, he's causing the death of that kohen. How is that? So Shnei Amar Umesu Bo Kiyechalalu. Because as mentioned before, that misuse of truma results in death penalty. You give truma to a kohen who doesn't know how to treat it with the appropriate sanctity. It's as if Kiviyachol one is causing death to that particular kohen. So Gemara says, the Be'er Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Tana. Af masion of ashma. You even cause the kohen to violate an avera shneimar v'yasiu osa of an asher ba'achalas kacheim. So what's really fascinating about all of this is, and just a generally interesting motif, how again in these cases you would think that giving truma to the kohen, of course, is an objective chesed. So giving truma to the kohen is only a chesed, is only something good if the kohen knows what to do with it. If he doesn't know how to handle the gift, then not only is it not a chesed, but in fact it's a liability for him. A tremendous yisod in life as well, about when you give, it could be a yisod in parenting, about giving children things. It's a beautiful bracha for a parent to give children something, as long as what? the child knows how to handle it. To give a child something, right, there's a big yesod in technology, a big yesod in many areas. To give a child something that might be objectively nice, but they don't know what to do with it, is not the parental gift, but instead it's creating tremendous liability. Okay, Gemara goes weiter. Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel says, from where do we find, again, a biblical allusion to Tchias HaMesim? Shene'emar, Begam Hakimosi es Prisi, this is very interesting. Itam loseis lohem es eretz Kinan. The pasuk says, and I will uphold my covenant with them, to give to them, lohem, to them, right? Does lachem lo ne'emar ela lahem? This is very interesting. The pasuk doesn't say, Baruch Hu doesn't say, no, I'm upholding my covenant to give you lachem. Rather, it says lahem, to them. Who is the them? If you look at Rashi, this is Rashi on the right side, about halfway down, actually a little bit more than halfway down. Elalahem, the mashma sheftiach HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'avosenu, Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yakov, sheyitin lahem Eretz Yisrael. V'chi lahem nitna, v'alo libnehem nitna. So the pasuk makes it sound, but it's such an interesting way to read the pasuk, that again, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu was talking to Am Yisroel, who was alive at the time, it would use the lashon of what? Of lachem, to you. Lahem means to them. Who's the them? The Gemara understands it's referring to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. To give them to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were dead. They were long dead by the time Klal Yisrael came into Egypt. Came into Eretz Yisrael. Rather, what do you see? That ultimately, again, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov will receive Eretz Yisrael. What does that show you? Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim. So the Gemara says, fine. Beautiful. Shalom in this Rabbi Gamliel. So listen to this. The meaning. Now who's a min? A min is like an apikore, someone who doesn't believe. Now the truth is, we're going to see, we use the terms min, apikores very interchangeably. What we're going to see is, in fact, they really refer to different levels of heretics, or I should say, people who dafka don't believe in certain things. So we'll see the distinctions. Shalom minas Rabbi Gamliel. So the minas Rabbi Gamliel. Minay shekalish baruch mechayim mesim. From where do you know that the Hashem brings back the dead? Amar lahem min Torah, min Nevi'im, u'min Ksuvim. It's incredible. Rabbi Gamliel says, I'm going to bring you a proof from Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. Now all of Rabbi Gamliel's proofs, they rejected. We'll see what happens. Min Torah. So number one, what's the raya min Torah? The Chsev, Vayomer Shema Moshe, Hincha Shochev Imavosecha V'kam. This is pretty explicit. Hashem says to Moshe, you are going to literally again die. You're going to lay with your forefathers, V'kam, and you are going to arise. Wow, pretty explicit. So how did they disprove it? No. They said, Gamliel, you are putting the comma in the wrong place. Amrulo, V'dilma, V'kam ha'am hazeh v'zana. No. The way to read the pasuk is as follows. Moshe, you're going to die. And after you die, V'kam ha'am hazeh v'zana. The people are going to rebel. When you die, the people worship idolatry. The V'kam is not going on Moshe, but rather the V'kam is going on who? On the people. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Min Nevi'im. Okay, so they rejected that first proof. Next, Min Nevi'im. What's the proof from Navi? Dechsev yiyu meisecha nivasi yukumun hakitzu v'ranenu shochne afar kital oros talacha ve'eretz refaim tipa. So both say in this pasuk, what do you see? This phrase. The phrase you see, hakitzu v'ranenu shochne afar. Those who sleep in the dust will once again wake up. Hakitzu v'ranenu, and will sing praise to Hashem. That's a pretty clear statement. V'dilma mesim shechi echeskel. Maybe that's referring to the dead that Yecheskel brought back to life. Who did Yecheskel bring back to life? That's the Atzamos Yeveshim, right? That's the valley of dry bones. So that's a specific episode it's referring to. Next, Min Ksuvim, from Ksuvim, Dechsev, V'chikecha kiyayin atov, holich ledodi l'meisharim, dovave sifsei yeshenim. See here, both say the pasuk. Here, the pasuk makes reference in Shir Hashirim. Literally, again, that phrase, dovave sifsei yeshanim. The lips of those who sleep will move. Sleep, a reference to death. Lips, they will move, meaning a reference to the idea that once again they'll speak. So the Minim said to Rabbi Yochanan, maybe that's referring to the fact that sometimes the lips of the dead move in the grave. Now, when do the lips of the dead move in the grave? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, what Rabbi Yochanan is so beautiful. So beautiful. When a person dies, if someone says over a halacha, now by the way, halacha doesn't just have to mean a halacha. What that means is when a person dies and someone says over a piece of their Torah in this world, the deceased's lips move in the grave. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So really, really beautiful idea. First of all, this idea that when a person leaves over Torah, a person leaves over lessons for their families, a person leaves over yisodos that are said over even after they are no longer alive, by definition, it gives them a continued kiyum, a continued life, a continued eternality in this world. So a person dies, someone says over their Torah, someone says over their saying, someone says over their yisod, the lips move in the grave. Incredible. So the minim did not believe anything that Rabbi Gamliel said until Rabbi Gamliel gave them over the following idea. What was the following idea? Hashem lavosechem laseis lahem. So again, reference to Eretz Yisrael again, that Hashem has swore to give over to you. Now, I should say to them. Lachem lo ne'emar. It doesn't say Hashem is giving it over to you. Rather, what does it say? Ella lahem, to them. Mikana tchias hamesim min haTorah. So from here you see ultimately again a reference to tchias hamesim min haTorah. Incredible, because once again, the giving over to them. Who's the them? The assumption is this is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So from here you see an explicit allusion to this idea that Hashem that again the dead will come back to life. Incredible. Others say, Rabbi Gamliel quoted from a different pasuk. They both say this is so beautiful. V'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokechem chayim kulchem hayom. Others say that it's from this pasuk. Now, literally translated, what does it mean? And you who cling to Hashem, your God. Right? Chayim kulchem hayom. So it's interesting how to translate this. You will live fully today, or you are fully alive today. So it says the Gemara Pshita, the Chayim kulchem hayom. That's obvious. Obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking to them. So of course they're alive today. Ela afilu biyom shekol ha'olam kulam mesim atem chayim. Even at a time when everyone else is dead, you will be alive. So the idea, the way the Gemara is reading this pasuk is, Vatem advekim Hashem Elokechem. Ultimately, again, you who cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chayim Kulchem Hayom. Hayom means you will come back to life. That even on a day where everyone else is dead, you will come back to life. Such a beautiful and incredible yisod. So the Gemara goes right to Shalom Romim. There's much to say about that pasuk as well, but if we have time, I'll come back to it later. Shalom Romim as Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. So ultimately, again, the Romans asked Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, what did they ask him? So they asked Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya a two-pronged question. Number one, how do we know that there's resurrection of the dead? And number two, how do we know that Hashem knows what's going to happen? Two-pronged question. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya says, I can answer both of those questions from one pasuk. Vayomer Shalom Moshe, Hincha shochev v'mavosecha, v'kam ha'ama zeh v'zana. So again, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya read the pasuk, Moshe, you're going to die, v'kam, and you're going to come back to life. So from here you see a remez to tchias hamesim. So the Gemara says, they said back to him, V'dilma, v'kama amazeh v'zana. Okay, Moshe, that's not how to read the pasuk. Maybe the way you read the pasuk is that ultimately Moshe, you're going to die. The v'kam doesn't go on Moshe's resurrection. Rather, what does v'kam go on? V'kam goes on ultimately, again, that Klal Yisrael are going to rebel. Amr lahu. So Rabbi Shmuel Silber said, fine, even if you say that, at least nakutu miyapalga b'yadeichu diodea ma'asha asaliyos. So again, even if you're not going to use this pasuk as a remez to tchias hamesim, you could at least use it for what? As a remez, as a scriptural proof that Hashem knows what's going to happen. Right? Because again, here Hashem is saying to Moshe, Moshe, you're going to die. And when you die, Klal Yisrael is going to rebel. Okay, incredible. So the Gemara says, "It's my name, Rabbi Yochanan ben Yochai, B'nai Shekash Baruch Hu Mechai Mesim V'Yodei Masha Asalios." So we'll say, "Rabbi Yochanan asked, how do I know Baruch Hu is going to bring back the dead? And how do I know that Hashem knows what is going to happen? Shneimar, hincha shochev im avosecha v'kam. Ultimately, again, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you are going to die, but you will come back. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, b'davar zeh, ziyafti sifrei minim. So Rabbi Eliezer says like this, in this matter, the books of the heretics have really been, they have forgeries. They have forgeries. How so? Shehayu omrim, ain't chesamesim in HaTorah. Remember again, because these books of heresy said, there is no resurrection. There's no resurrection. I said to them, Siyaftem Toraschem, velo ha'elisem biyadchem klum. So number one, you've forged the Torah. You forged the Torah, and it didn't work. So what's going on over here? Sha'atem omrim ein tchias ha'mesim in HaTorah. For you claim there is no tchias ha'mesim. And yet it says, Haru Omer, Hikaris, Tikaris, Hanefesh Shahi, Avonaba. Shabbos say there is a double lashon of hikaris tikaris. Why the double lashon? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. Tikaris avonaba. Hikaris tikaris ba'olam hazeh. Avonaba le'ema. So we'll say where hikaris tikaris means that the sin will be cut off from this world. Avonaba, its sin will remain with it. Le'imas. When is that? La olam haba. Does not refer to the world to come. So from here you see ultimately again Raya for Tchias HaMesim. So the Gemara says, Hikaris tikaris hanef. Good. Let me slide down. Amali rapapa lavayi. V'leimaluhu l'tarvayu. Me tarvayu me hikaris tikaris. So I understand why can't you learn both that out from hikaris tikaris? Hikaris in olam hazeh, tikaris the olam haba. To which the Gemara says, Havu amri lei dibra Torah kolosho menei adam. Because if I would have said that, then the Minim would have said, no, that's just a colloquial expression. Okay? Kitanoi. Shabbos said, this is machlok gestanan. Hikaris tikaris, hikaris palamazet, hikaris palamazet, Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva understands the double lashon. Hikaris, be cut off in this world. Tikaris in the world to come. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel, v'lo kvar ne'amar, es Hashem hu migadei v'nichrasa. But the pasuk says that he's blaspheming Hashem, he'll be cut off. V'chi shlosha olamim yesh. Are there three worlds? In other words, then that means that there's three expressions of being cut off. So what's going on over here? So the Gemara says, he'll be cut off in this world. He carries the olam haba, right? He carries be cut off in the world to come. And he carries dibra Torah kalashal menei adam. This refers to the way the Torah speaks. Okay? Bein Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Akiva, avona ba my avdi. But both according to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, what do you do with the phrase of avona ba? This is beautiful. Yachal afilu asa tshuva. You might have thought that the sinner would be cut off even if he did tshuva. So the Gemara says, Talmud lomar avona ba. When is the sinner cut off? Only when? When it's avona ba. When the sin remains within him. However, the Gemara says, Lo amarti ella bisman shavona ba. The only time the sinner is cut off is when the sin remains with him. But if the sinner does tshuva, then ultimately, again, he is not cut off. Incredible, I both say. So really, really, really fascinating. So again, what the point that you begin to see is, like we mentioned yesterday, there's no one pasuk that says there is tchias hamesim. Rather, what we have is a series of biblical, I should say Tanakh allusions. It's not right. Biblical allusions, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, different allusions, different hints, different ideas. Beautiful. Let's go right. We're not finished yet. What's this Gemara? Shala Cleopatra Malkusa es Rabbi Meir. Wow. Queen Cleopatra asked the following question of Rabbi Meir. Amra Abu said, by the way, just so you should know, the Maharsha points this out. Cleopatra is to queens what Paro is to kings. So this is I think historically they refer to Cleopatra as a particular person, but this was more a monarchical, Rabbi Maharsha says we see this from different usages in Shas. This is more a monarchical title than anything else. But in any event, it's pretty cool. So Cleopatra asks Rabbi Meir, Amra, Yedana dechaye shechvi. So listen to this. She said, I know that the dead will come back to life. I'm sorry. I know that the living die. Dechsev ve'atzitzu mer ke'esev ha'aretz. I'm sorry. I know that the living will come back to life. So Cleopatra said, I it's interesting, I must say, right? This Cleopatra, I believe in Tchias HaMesim. Incredible. I know that the dead will come back to life. She calls the pasuk ve'atzitzu meir ke'esev ha'aretz. Because again, the pasuk says that literally they will sprout forth from the city that's referenced to Yerushalayim, like the grass comes out of the earth. So once again, it's interesting. This pasuk was actually not quoted in our previous conversations, but Cleopatra quotes this pasuk from Tehillim. Right? So I know that the dead will come back to life. So what's the shayla? Ella kishein omdin arumin o b'malbushehen omdin. Fascinating. When the dead come back to life, do they come back unclothed or do they come back in their clothing? Incredible. So Amrullah, so Rabbi Meir says back to Cleopatra, Kavachomer mechita, make a kavachomer from a grain of wheat. How so? So the Gemara says, Umachita shenikpara aruma. So the chita, right, the grain is buried unclothed. What does that mean? Then you plant wheat kernels. When you plant the seed, it's just the seed. There's nothing else but the seed. And yet, yotza become a lavushin. Yet it comes out with many layers of clothing. Now, what does that mean, many layers of clothing? What it means is, again, the kernel itself it has many layers. It has a husk. It has different things on top of it. So you see from here, again, just like the seed goes into the earth unclothed, ultimately, again, it comes out with many layers. So the Gemara says, Tzadikim shenik barem bilavushein, but Tzadikim ultimately, again, who are buried with their clothing, alachas kama v'kama. Now, a tzaddik ultimately, again, is buried with, now, lav dafka clothing, but tachrichim, but shrouds. So the tzaddik who is buried with clothing, all the more so, he will come out clothed as well. So we'll say, it's such a, see, first of all, you could just say stam, it's just like a fascination question. Right, that again, I believe in resurrection of the dead. How exactly does this work? When the dead come out of the grave, what is it? Unclothed, clothed. So we'll say, what's interesting also is it could very well be clothing, we've seen this before, is often a metaphor also for accomplishments. Right? You're begodim, right? Becholes yu begadecha levanim. The Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, at all times let your clothing be white. Let your clothing be white. So clothing represents accomplishment. So it could very well be that what Cleopatra was really asking was the following. When there is Tchias HaMesim, how do you come back? How are you reborn? Are you reborn like tabla rasa, right, naked, unclothed, like new life, new person, mamish, like a new baby being born, kekatan shenola dami? Or is your resurrected life somehow a continuity of your previous life? Are you born with your clothing? In other words, do you come back? And again, I have my maisim tovim. I have my mitzvahs. So again, it's a fascinating question. Is resurrection a continuation of my previous life? Do I come back with my clothing? Or again, am I born unclothed? Is it a brand new life? To which Rabbi Meir responds, resurrected life is a continuity of previous life. Which I will say is so fascinating because what that does is it really urges us to maximize the life we have here in this world. Because the way I live here not only impacts me in this world, not only impacts me what we'll call Olam Haba, which is the place where I go after I die, but it even impacts me in resurrected life as well. Everything I do in this world follows me in the multiple stages and iterations of my life. Such a profound Gemara. So the Caesar said to Rabbi Gamliel, Amrisu d'shach v'chaye. I heard that you guys say that the dead come back to life. Okay, so it's interesting. So as opposed to Cleopatra, who believed in Tchias HaMesim, but just had some detailed questions about it, so you see over here that the Caesar doesn't believe it. Caesar doesn't. So Caesar says to Rabbi, I don't understand. You guys say, Amrisu, you guys say, d'shach v'chaye, that the dead will come back to life. I don't understand how that works. Havu afra v'afra mikachaye. The dead ultimately again become dust, right? And dust can't come back to life. Dust can't come back to life. So the Gemara says, top of Tzadik Aleph 91a, Amruluhu Barte Shafke va'ana mahadra. So again, these exchanges are fascinating. So the daughter of the Caesar said to Rabbi Gamliel, I got this, right? She wanted to answer this particular question. Okay, so she says, so Avana Mahajale, Shnei Yotzim, we'll say second line, Tzadik Aleph 91a, second line in. Shnei Yotzim Yesh Birenu. You know, there are two people, two fashioners, creators of stuff, right? Pottery people. Yesh Birenu, right? Rashi says over here, Shnei Yotzim Birenu, Achaz Yotzim Kilim Min Hamayim. They create utensils. Two people create utensils. Listen to this. One creates utensils from water, and one creates utensils from clay. So Eiza mehem meshubach. Who's better? To which the Caesar responds, of course, Amrlei, Zeshet Minamayim. Of course, again, it's a much greater feat to create utensils from water than it is to create from clay. Amrlei Minamayim. So the Gemara says, Izim Meshubach, Amrlei, Zeshet Minamayim. Amrlei, she said to him, Minamayim Tsar, Minatit Lakol Shekin. So Hashem fashions people from water. Now, what does that mean, water? It's a reference to Zera, to the drop of semen, which creates a baby. So if Kadosh Baruch Hu could create human life from literally mayim, from water, then alachas kama v'kama, he could create it from dirt. In other words, right, it's a greater feat to create utensils from water than it is from clay. But everyone agrees you can create utensils from clay. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and creates life, ultimately again from water, could certainly go ahead and create life from clay, from dirt as well. The Rabbi Shmuel Tana, kavachomer mikli zechus. This is beautiful. You can make a kavachomer from the creation of glass. The creation of glass to tchias amesim. Makli zechus sha'amalon beruach basar v'dam. Right, how is glass made? You blow glass. You blow glass. So glass is made through the breath of man. And nishbaru yeshlan takana. And even if glass breaks, you could melt it down and you could refashion it. Man who is made with the breath of Hashem. Right? Hashem blew life into us. Alachas kama v'kama. All the more so that if it breaks, so to speak, and dies, it can be put back together. Such a profound Gemara. Amar Yahu. Mina the Rabbi Ami. So I'll say, also there's so much to say on each of these Gemaras because each of these statements are tremendous metaphors for different aspects of our lives. But again, I underlined this, so we'll come back to it at some point in Meretz Hashem. So there was a particular non-believer, Amin, who said to Rabbi Ami, Amrisu, you say the shach v'chaye. You guys say that the dead come back to life. So the Gemara says, V'ha havu afra v'afra mikachaye. But the dead turn to dust, and how can dust possibly come back to life? Let me give you a mashal. Let me give you a mashal. I'll give you a mashal. There was once a human king, and the human king said to his servants, Go and build for me a palace. There's only one problem. There's no water, there's no dirt in the place where I need you to build a palace, but I need you to figure it out. Halchu banu also. And Baruch Hashem, the subjects were able to figure it out. They built the king a beautiful palace. Liyamim naflo. Sometime later, the palace fell down. Amar lahem. So the king says to his subjects, Chazru benu also b'makom sheyesh afar umayim. I want you to rebuild the palace, but this time I want you to build it in a place where there is water and there is dirt. Amru lo ein ani yicholin. And the subject said, we can't do it. We're unable to do it. So Kahn alehem. The king got very angry at them. So the king said, I don't understand. You were able to build a palace when there was no water and dirt. You were able to pull it off. Now that I'm giving you water and dirt, you can't pull it off. So we'll say, what's the nimshal? HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates man from nothing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world from nothing. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to create from nothing, then even when man turns back into dirt is still something. So if you could create from nothing, you certainly could create from something. That was the answer about Tchias HaMesim. And if you don't believe about this idea of something turning into something else, say lebika, go out into the valley, or re'ei achbar, see this particular type of rodent, shayom chatziav basar v'chatziav adama. Somebody said there's a lot of discussion exactly about what they're talking about, what Chazal are talking about over here, this rodent, that apparently is half flesh and half earth. L'machar hishritz v'na'asa kula basar. The next day, ultimately, again, it comes completely flesh. So you see the ability of things to transform from earth into flesh. Shema Tomar Lizman Meruba. Maybe you'll say it takes a lot of time for this rodent to have this transformation. Allah Lahar, go up onto the mountain, first wide line. Ure'ei shayom ein bo chilazon, ela chilazon echad. And see in this particular mountain that on this day there's only one chilazon. Also remember again, chilazon is that creature from which the tcheles is created. So you go up on the mountain, there's one chilazon. Lamachar yardu geshamim, the next day it'll rain. V'nesmale kulo chilzonos. Ultimately, again, the mountain will be filled with chilazons. So again, the idea over here is, number one, that earth could turn to flesh, right? Something could turn to nothing. And from the earth, again, things could sprout as evidenced by the chilazons. Incredible. I think that there is a tremendous profundity in that mashal as well about the king. Right? Remember the mashal on the king, what happened? The king said to the subjects, build me a palace. And he said, build me a palace where there is nothing. There's no dirt, there's no water. There's no dirt, there's no water. And the subjects do it. Palace falls down sometime later, and then the king says again, build me a palace. Build me a palace in a place where there is dirt and water. And the subjects say, we can't do it, impossible. And the king said, what are you talking about? You built the palace with nothing, Allah has come, you build the palace with dirt and water. I think the metaphor is as follows. I would say, all of us have times in life where we are pushed to accomplish things that we did not think we could accomplish. Right? Our back was up against the wall. We're in extenuating circumstances, difficult circumstances, and literally again, we pulled the proverbial rabbit out of the hat. I did it. Baruch Hashem. Really difficult circumstances, maybe even potentially what looked like impossible circumstances, and I came through, I did it. And yet then, there are times day to day where my circumstances are not impossible, and I don't pull through. And I tell myself, I can't do it. Says, what are you talking about? Do you remember that time that you came through in impossible circumstances? Do you remember that incredibly stressful circumstance where, again, it wasn't clear if you would succeed or not, and you did, and you came through? If you could succeed in difficult, virtually impossible circumstances, if you could build the personalistic palace with no water and no dirt, then Allah has kama v'kama day to day, when the circumstances are not difficult, you certainly can come through. And I both say we all have situations like this, where really difficult situations. If you don't have a situation like this, is a chisa, but I think almost all of us have situations like this of really difficult circumstances where I said to myself, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. And I got through it. And not only did I get through it, but I succeeded and I grew. And if I could do that in the extenuating circumstances in life, then I certainly could perform in day-to-day life. If I could make things happen where there was no dirt, there was no water, then all the more so I could build a personalistic palace where there is dirt and there is no water. Incredible yisod for life. The Gemara goes weiter. This is a great series of stories. There was a particular man who said to Gavia ben Pesisa, that's his name, Gavia ben Pesisa. Rashi points out over here, Kach Shmo v'haisa lo akmumius bigabo. Now, interestingly enough, so this guy Gavia ben Pesisa, who himself was a shtickle Talmud Chacham, and he was a hunchback. We're going to see that part of the story in just a little bit. Rashi points out over here, he was a hunchback. Okay, so what happened? So there was a min who came over to him, and this min said to him, Vai lechon chayve, damrison mesi chayin, de chayin misi, de misi chayin. So there was this apikaris, he comes over to Gavim Bepesis, and he says, what's the matter with you guys? Speaking about the Jews, right? He calls the Jews Rishon. You're Rishon. Why are you Rishon? Because you espouse false ideology. You say that the dead come back to life. It's not possible. That which is alive dies. Can you possibly say that which is dead comes back to life? Amarle. So Gavir ben Pesisa responds, Vaylechon chayve. You're the Rishon. Da amrison mesi lo chayin. Da lo havi chaya. Da havi chaya lo kol shekin. So we'll say, so Gavir ben Pesisa says back to the min, he says, you're the Rasha. I'll tell you why. That which is not alive does come back to life. Every birth, how does every birth start? There wasn't life, and then life occurs. So you see, by definition, just simple propagation of the species requires no life to life. So we have a paradigm for this. So what are you talking about? You're the Rasha. Every single life starts with no life and then goes to life. So what's crazy to think that the dead can come back to life? So Gavir ben Pesisa, he called this apikores a Rasha. Amrle, chayvi karisli. So the apikores says to Gavir ben Pesisa, you're calling me a Rasha? Kamina, if I would be over there, you're lucky someone's holding me back, right? If I would come over to you, ba'itna becha upashtina lak musecha. I would kick you so hard that I would kick out your hunchback, right? If that's in other words, this is incredible, right? People are people. Nothing changes over time, right? You're lucky my friend is holding you back. I would kick you sort of, I would kick you straight, right? I would kick you, that you would kick out your hunchback. So it's great. So Gavim Pesisa Amalei, Imata Osakain, Rofe Uman Tikra, Uschar Harbe Tital. Do it, man, right? Do it. Absolutely. If you could do that, I would give you a shkoyach. Not only would I give you a shkoyach, but I would pay you a handsome amount of money, handsome copay for that visit to the doctor. Incredible. Now, that's our introduction to Gavia ben Pesisa. The next number of stories we're going to be dealing with Gavia ben Pesisa as well. And I will say we're going to see something fascinating just about his personality. On the 24th of Nisan, Isnatilu dimusunoi mi Yehuda mi Yerushalayim. So again, those are oppressors left Yehuda and Yerushalayim. Now again, what oppressors? What are we talking about? So watch this. Kishabo b'nei Africa, ladun Am Yisroel. When the people of Africa came to the Romans with a legal claim against the Jewish people. What was their claim? Lifnei Alexandros Moston. So again, actually, before Alexander the Great, Alexander the Macedonian, right? So they're really not Rome, right? But they came before Alexander the Macedonian for a din Torah with Klali. So Amrlo, Eretz Canaan Shalom. Now, by the way, Jews liked Alexander, right? How do we know that Jews liked Alexander? Because also there are Jews named Alexander, which is the strangest thing in the world. I don't mean an English name. I mean like a Hebrew name, Alexander, right? Which is very strange because considering it is not exactly a Yiddish nomen, right? It's not a Hebrew name. But again, this was Al Sakara Satov that Jews had towards Alexander the Great. The name stuck. So the people of Africa come with a din Torah against the Jews. Amrlo, Eretz Canaan Shalanu. What's their claim? The land of Canaan belongs to us. So we'll say, I just want to point out, there is nothing new under the sun. Ein chadash tachas hashemesh. Right? So before there was a Hague, right? Before there was any of these other mechanisms, the nations of the world were always bringing their legal claims against the Jewish people to say we don't own the land. By the way, Africa is a pretty big place. Eretz Yisrael, not so big, right? You wonder again, what does Africa need with Israel? What they need another desert, right? But again, I was saying, this is the derech of humanity. The derech of humanity is they cannot leave Klal Yisrael alone. They cannot bear, the world can't bear that Jews have some, again, it hurts us to say because we'd like to think that the world has changed and, we all love each other and there's no more anti-Semitism and everybody loves us. And clearly, again, that illusion has been blown to smithereens, right? We see that that's no longer the case. And again, it's actually very affirming. It's the same dynamic. The world for some reason, can't be so well that Jews have something. All the more so that Jews could defend themselves, that Jews could stand up for themselves. Right? So again, they come before Alexander the Great. Canaan is ours. Now, what's the claim? Dechsev, and again, they bring a right from the Torah. These were from Africans. Dechsev, Eretz Canaan ligvulosah. It says that the land of Canaan is included in all of the boundaries. Now, what are the boundaries? Canaan. So therefore, they looked at Canaan as part of essentially Africa. In other words, they had Africa. Canaan is included in this as well. Canaan avun dahano inshia. Canaan was our father, right? Remember again, Canaan becomes the father of Cush, of Ham. So the Africans say this is our father. So because again it's our father, we own this land. So this was this was a claim brought before Alexander the Great. The Jews have to now defend their claim to Eretz Canaan, or Eretz Yisrael. So Gavir ben Pesisa comes along. He says, he said to the Chachamim, let me argue this case on behalf of the Jewish people. Now watch this. So if I lose, the good thing is, there's really no harm because they could just say, now apparently we'll say, what you see from these stories is Gavir ben Pesisa was not recognized as one of the ranking sages. That wasn't his identity. Therefore he says, if I lose the case, it's not a big deal, because whatever, you could just say, he wasn't really representing us, right? The Africans, they defeated just a regular guy. And if I win the case, Amru Lahem, say, Toras Moshe nitzachtem. The victory will not be attributed to me. Rather, what will the victory be attributed to? To Torah. Which I will say, by the way, just you begin to see the beauty and the power of the personality of Gavia ben Pesisa, that all of this was literally about Torah. This was about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gavia ben Pesisa saw himself as an ambassador of the Ribono Shalom. So if I lose, the loss is mine. But if I win, the win is the Ribono Shalom. Incredibly selfless. Okay, so okay, so he gets permissions from the Rabbanim. He represents Klal Yisrael in front of Alexander the Great. So he says to the Africans, where are you bringing a proof from? Okay, from the Torah. We just said it. I'll also bring it right from the Torah. What's the pasuk? Shneimar Vayomer Arur Kinan Eved Avodim Yela'achav. Canaan is cursed, and Canaan should be a slave to his brothers. If that's the case, Eved. So again, Chevra, who's here? You said you're the children of Canaan. Canaan was cursed. Canaan are Avodim. Eved Shekana Avodim Nechasim. Eved Lemi Nechasim Lemi. If an Eved acquires property, who does the property belong to? For that matter, who does the Eved himself belong to? V'lo od. Not only that. So furthermore, again, you guys owe us back wages, back service. Why? Because you're the slaves to Klal Yisrael, and what? You have not been working for years. So not only do you not own land, right, but we own you, and you owe us back wages, back payment for all of your delinquent service. Okay, so what happened? Alexander Malka hechzir lo tshuva. So Alexander says to the Africans, what say you? You know what? Right? What's your response? So they said to Alexander, "Give us 3 days. Give us 3 days to come back with an answer." He gave them the time. So ultimately, again, they searched, but they could not find an answer. Miyad barchu. So the Africans ran away. And what happened? V'nichu sadosein kishein zeros, v'karmein kishein netuos. They left behind Avos. Now here's what's interesting. So apparently, again, they were living in Canaan, right? In Eretz Yisrael, they were living there. But again, they had no claim. They recognized they had no claim, so they left. They ran away, and they left behind laden fields and laden vineyards. And the Gemara says, "Va'osa shana shvius haisa." It was a Shemitah year. So not only did Klal Yisrael succeed, but ultimately, again, Klal Yisrael went ahead and Baruch Hashem had from where to sustain themselves even during a Shemitah year. Shabbos says, so again, what's the yisod with this? What, it's a fascinating story. What's the takeaway message? Shabbos says 2 messages. Number one, that Jews should not be bashful or apologetic about what is ours. What is ours? We have very little in this world, but the little bit that we have is ours, and we should not be ashamed to defend it, and we should not be ashamed to assert our ownership over it, nor should we be apologetic about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to us and did not give it to others. When Jews are apologetic, so ultimately, again, that weakness is exploited and pounced upon. When Jews are proud, when Jews are direct, and when Jews assert their sovereignty over that which is ours, that is when things come together. Number 2, when you do things not for self-serving, egotistic, or egocentric purposes, but you do things for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when things work. Gavia ben Pesis, I want to point something out, by the way. If you think about it, it's interesting to note, it's not like Gavia ben Pesis came with like a whole pshetel over here. Right? Welcome to my din Torah. I'd like to thank my parents for this. It says in the Rambam, it says in the Chaim Brisker, it says in the Even HaZelana. He quotes a pasuk. Like it's not a complicated drasha. Why couldn't other people come up with this? I don't know what the answer is, but on a very simple level, Gavi ben Pesisa made a very simple idea. This is not about me. This is about the Ribono Shalom. When you do things for the right purposes, specifically for the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, things come together. Be unapologetic about what is ours. And number 2, do things for the right purposes and things come together. Next. Shuv Pamachas, another din Torah. It's fascinating. Bo b'nei Mitzrayim ladon im Yisrael lifnei Alexander Mokton. So once again, now the Egyptians brought a court case. They'll say this is literally, again, we think it's new things that like nations of the world bring legal proceedings against the Jewish people. It's not true. It's not true. The Africans did it. And I will say again, right? Who led the claims of genocide? Just fascinating. Just to see how the world is so circular, right? Who was at the forefront of the claims of genocide against the state of Israel? South Africa. In other words, just pointing out, you see certain things, they just are the way that they are. And while it's nice to think that the world changes, it really doesn't. The only thing that changes is us. The world very much stays the same, especially in its hatred for Klal Yisrael. It's overwhelming. Next court case. Who else now comes before Alexander the Great? Egypt. Amulo, Harehu Omer, Vashem Nasan Eschina Ama Beinei Mitzrayim, Vashilum, Tenu Lanu Kesev V'Zashina Taltum Imenu. So the Egyptians come. Now, by the way, we'll say this actually is a pretty good claim, right? So the pasuk says when we left Mitzrayim, the pasuk says in Yoni Diyoma, coming up to Pesach, the pasuk says Hashem gave the favor of Klal Yisrael in the eyes of the Egyptians. Vayashilum. Now, Vayashilum literally means they borrowed. Now, there's different ways to interpret that word. Some say they asked, right? Others say it means borrowed. Now, the Egyptians are clearly coming with the idea that it means borrowed, which means Klal Yisrael borrowed a whole lot of silver and gold from the Egyptians. So the Egyptians say, so happy to have lent it to you, right? We'd like our stuff back. Okay. So the Gemara says, Amar Gvir ben Pesisa. So Gvir ben Pesisa says, Lechachamim Tnuli Rishos ve'elech va'adoni mine. Levi Alexandra. So Gvir ben Pesisa says, do me a favor. It says to the rabbis, I'll deal with this. Give me Rishos, I'll deal with it. Emin Atzchuni once again, Amru Lahem, Had Yot Shevachem Nitzachtem. Say if I'm successful. I'm sorry, if they are not victorious. If they win the case over me, so the Lamais again, it's not a big deal because people will just say, this guy Gavim Pesisa, he's a hedyot. He's just a regular guy, right? Ve'imani anatzeach osam, but if I am successful, Amru lahem, Toras Moshe Rabbeinu nitzachtem. Then ultimately again, the glory will be given not to me, but the glory will be given ultimately again to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nasal Roshos, Valach Lidanei Mayim. Okay, so Gavim Pesisa shows up to Beis Din and he adjudicates the case with the Egyptians. Okay, Amru lahem, Mehechem atem mevi'in raya. Egyptians, what's your raya? What's your proof? Amru lahem, TORAH. Amru lahem. So again, the Egyptians said, we told you, Vayashilum, you borrowed stuff from us. So okay, Shkai, we're happy to have lent it to you. Now you want our stuff back? So which Gvir ben Pesisa says, Amr lahen, Afani lo avi lachem raya el min HaTorah. I'll also bring you a proof from the Torah. Shnei Amar, Umoshav b'nei Yisrael, asher yashuv b'Mitzrayim, shloshim shana va'arba me'os shana. The Jews were in Egypt for 430 years. Now 430 years, remember again, that's the clock from Akedas Yitzchak. So we're there for 430 years. Tnu lanu schar avoda shel shishim rivo sheshibaratem b'Mitzrayim shloshim va'arba me'os shana. So Gvir ben Pesisa says, Chaver, no problem. If you want to make an accounting, happy to make an accounting. You say we owe you the gold and silver that we borrowed. Okay, you also owe us back wages for 600,000 men who worked for 430 years. So let's just, let's do some forensic accounting over here, right? Let's go. Let's settle up. Let's settle up. Back wages for 430 years for 500,000 people, and we're happy to go ahead and settle up with you. So what happens? Some of them, Alexander Mogdon, Hechzir lo tshuva. So Alexander the Great says to the Egyptians, okay, so what do you have to say? Amrulo, Tenu lanu zman shlosh yamim. So give us 3 days, we'll come back. So Nasan shlosha, Nasan lahem zman, bat kuvla matzot tshuva. So ultimately, again, they searched for 3 days, they couldn't find an answer. Miyad hinichu sadosein kishen zros v'karmei kishen netuos ubarchu. They left behind their fields, right? They're laden fields, laden vineyards. Va'osa shana shviyas haisa, and it was a Shemitah year. Incredible, I will say. So the Jews had the benefit of this. I will say, I just want to point out something very interesting. Why is it that both the Africans and the Egyptians run away? Right? Why, come back, be a man, right? And say, you know what, we don't have an answer. Well, I will say, because here's the difference. At the end of the day, when you're arguing for MS, if you don't have an answer, you could come back and you could say, you're right, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer. When you recognize that what you're doing is smoke and mirrors, and only an attempt to rob people of what is rightfully theirs, you don't even have the backbone to show back up in court. And that's what the Gemara is teaching us over here. These weren't real claims, right? Because if you have a real claim, again, listen, in every court case, someone wins, someone loses. That's the way it works. Again, all you want is just a fair shake, recognizing you might win, you might lose. When you can't even show back up, when you can't even show your face again, when you can't even follow back up, that shows the emptiness of your claims to begin with. So profound. The Gemara goes right there. Shum pam achas bo b'nei Yishmael. That is incredible. Okay, so we'll say this is great. So everybody is jumping on the bandwagon over here. So who comes? Sons of Yishmael, b'nei TORAH, ladun im Yisroel. If the Alexander smoked on. So what's Yishmael's claim? What's their claim? Amrlo eretz kinaan shalanu. Okay. Yeah, let's do this, right? Let's do this, right? So Bnei Yishmael say, Eretz Canaan is ours. So what happened? Now, here's what's interesting. Yishmael comes with a different claim. They say, Eretz Yisrael shalanu v'shalachem, right? So it's interesting. Yishmael in this context says, we're not saying it's solely ours, we're saying it's also ours. Now this is very different, right? Africans claimed all ours. Right? Canaan claimed, right? Mitzrayim wanted back wages, right? They wanted money. Right? At the end of the day, so it's interesting, Yishmael, and we're going to see why Yishmael has to claim this. So Yishmael says, we're not claiming it's all ours, we're just claiming we're partners in it. We're partners in it. Why? So the Gemara says, Dichsiv ve'ela told us Yishmael ben Avram. Uksiv ve'ela told us Yitzchak ben Avram. So again, what's Yishmael's claim? By the way, Yishmael's claim is not a bad claim. Right? What's Yishmael's claim? We're also children of Avram. We're also children of Avram. The land was given to Avram. We too are the children of Avram. So why should we not have a share in Eretz Canaan? So once again, I'm going to give you Alexander's Mokdon. So once again, give you Chevra, let me do this. I'll judge it. I'll adjudicate it. Not adjudicate. I'll argue it. Right? So ultimately, again, so Gvim says, if I lose, they defeated the commoner. If I win, it's Torah that has won the victory. So what happened? So he says to Bnei Yishmael, what's your raya? What's your proof? So again, we just quoted it. We are also the children of Avram Avinu. I'll also bring a passage in Emar, end of Parashat Chayisara. Vayiten Avram es kol asher lo Yitzchak. Avram gave everything he owned to Yitzchak. And Avram gave the children of the concubines, Bnei Keturah, he gave them matanos. And then it says, Vayishalchem me'al Yitzchak beno. He sent them away. So the Gemara says, Nasan Avram, matanos. Av shenasan agatan lebanav b'chayev. V'shigar zeh me'al zeh. Klum yesh lazeh al zeh klum. If a father gives gifts to a son and then sends that son away, does the sent away son have any claims on the primary son? Of course not. Essentially what Gvim was saying is, what are you guys talking about? Avram gave Yishmael and the other sons of the concubines gifts, and then what did he do? He sent them away. And what does that mean? He said, Chevra, this is yours. I love you. I do love you. Right? After all we saw before in the Gemara with the Akedah. Amir says, I have two sons. I love them both. Yishmael, I love you. And that's why I'm giving you stuff, but now I'm sending you away. You have a different destiny than Yitzchak. So the Gemara says as follows. My matanos, by the way, what are the matanos that he gave them? Right? Ultimately, again, he gave them sorcery. So the Gemara says, so therefore, again, and interestingly enough, what I want to point out, what's fascinating about that story is, if you notice, the conversation ends there. Right? It's not like the Egyptians say, Yishmael says, we need 3 days in order to come back. Gevia ben Pasisa's raya was so compelling. It was like a mic drop. That was it. That was the end of the story right then and there. Yes, your father is the son of Avram Avinu. And Avram loved your father as well. But Avram gave your father gifts. He gave him stuff, and then he sent them away. When a father sends a son away, that means he doesn't want the second son to have anything to do with the first son. Hashem did not want Yitzchak, Avram did not want Yitzchak and Yishmael. Well, actually, remember, Avram did want Yitzchak and Yishmael to grow up together. Sarah didn't. Baruch Hu intervened, and Hashem said to Avram, listen to Sarah. So therefore, again, Gevia Bepesisa says, you have no chelik in Eretz Yishmael. You have Yishmael. You have no chelek in Eretz Yisrael. That's the end of the story. And if you notice, by at least according to this version of the story, Yishmael accepts it. There's no, let us get back to you, and the story is over. Absolutely incredible. All right, boss, you know what? We'll have to. All right, this might be a new record. Okay, we're fine. Right, we're going to stop over here for today. Again, let me ask you: Could we possibly go any faster? We can't go any faster. There's too much. We can start earlier. I will say we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach. We'll pick up in Yahrzeit Hashem on the bottom of Tzadik Aleph tomorrow. More incredible, dramatic, and overwhelming Gemara. Shkoyach, everyone.
Like the case of the min where he said it was knock you out basically. So he was upset with the argument.
Right.
Like that's what the result is.